So here, I had to replace a couple of valves. These two valves were bent. Well, these are the new ones, but the original valves were bent. These are the intake, the cylinder one intake valves. So I replaced those. And then I had to replace these two exhaust valves. Now, this is not a video about lapping valves. There's a lot of great videos on how to lap valves. Um, I just want to just point out a few things that I learned as I learned this process. So, these you lap valves because they need to be seated properly. You need to get a good seal, right? And it's got to be tested. Now, the best way to test the seal is to do a vacuum test. And there's a way to do your own. You can like make your own vacuum tester, and there's a couple of videos for that. And then once you do, you put it against the port here, and then it pulls a vacuum, and it tells you if you have a good seal on this. Now I don't have that, so I'm doing the old-fashioned water test where you pour water into the combustion chambers here, and then you see if it leaks out. If the problem is an exhaust valve, you see if it leaks out the exhaust side, or if it's an intake, you can look at it that way. Now, people say, oh, well, water is too thick, it won't really find specific leaks. Use like kerosene or gasoline or something. I mean, I don't want to mess with that. I don't want to be pouring volatile substances in here and have rags, with gasoline on them. So a lot of people use water, and water's fine. But now the problem I've been having is this valve here. No matter how much I lapped it, I always got a leak, right? I would pour water in here, and in a little while, it would start leaking. And actually, you could take a flashlight and look in here, and you could see, the moisture seeping through the edges. And it was always around this edge here. So I knew it wasn't the valve, right? Because normally, if it's always in one area, it's not the valve, it's the seat. That's the problem. So I started saying to myself, oh man, I gotta probably take this to the machine shop, have this resurfaced or whatever, recut, have the seats recut. But it was such a slight little leak. It wasn't like it was like dripping water. It was just like a little drop after like 10 minutes would form. So I just kept lapping it, but it was still leaking here. So then I realized, now this is what I've been using to lap it, right? Now I've tried just the old suction cup method. I tried using a drill, like a couple of videos say, and then there's even like this tool that has this big wheel that has like a clutch on it that supposedly makes it spin back and forth. I tried that, didn't work. I tried everything. The nice thing about just doing it by hand is that you can actually hear the difference in pitch, right? When you put on the lapping compound, right, and then you start spinning it, you hear the grinding noise, and then as it smooths out, the grinding noise, the pitch of the grinding noise goes down, right? So you sort of know when you're done, right? It's really cool, which is hard to, like, if you use a drill, you can't really hear that. And I mean, it takes patience, man. This is, I thought that I could just like lap it for a few seconds, put it in there, and nah, man, it takes, this. I've been working on this valve for 3 days, and you really just got to take a Zen approach to this, put on some music, put on your headphones, and just lap away. Now, you don't want to lap it too much, because you may just widen these seats too much, and then you won't be able to fit properly. But you gotta, if you have just a small little leak, you gotta keep lapping it. Now I was ready to give up on this, because no matter what I did, it kept leaking through here, right? But then I realized, I've been lapping it. These things are angled, right? These things are pointing toward me, and the two intakes are pointing toward me. The two intakes are sort of pointing that way, and I've been grinding it like this, see? Like that, with the stick pointing away. And then I said to myself, maybe that's the problem, right? Because since I'm back here, I'm sort of putting some type of force toward me, right? And what I'm thinking, well, I think what's happening, it was grinding more on this side, right? And less on that side. So then I said to myself, okay, why don't I just turn the whole cylinder head so that this is facing me? And that's what I've been doing. So I turned the whole cylinder head so this valve was like here, right? For example, sorry, up here actually, facing me, right? And then the leak started getting less and less. The leak started getting less and less as I grounded that way. Now, one little trick I learned from somebody else was use a light, right? Like I was doing, I was lapping this thing, and then I was putting the springs on and putting some water, man. And then you gotta take the springs back off. That's a long process. It's a hard process. You know, and then I was just like, okay, fine, no springs, but let me just put water in here. But then you gotta like suck up the water, clean it. And then I learned that you could just use a light, right? So what you do is you take a strong flashlight and you shine it on here. And then you look through the specific port for that valve, right? Now you should do it with the lights off, right? So you can see, and you can see a little sliver of light, right? A little sliver of light. Now, I'm gonna do it here. Now, so far, I think I've lapped it enough that I don't see any light anymore. I don't see any light, so I'm hoping now that if I put the springs on this thing, it's gonna be airtight. But I'm still gonna do a water test on this just to make sure. So basically, like I said before, you put some water in here, okay? And then if you want, you put like, let's say a tissue in here, and then you leave it for 30 minutes, right? 30 minutes. And then you come back and you check. If the tissue is completely dry, there's no water in the port at all, you're good, right? Don't leave it for more than that. Some people are like, oh, I'm gonna leave it overnight. No, don't leave it overnight because you'll probably see a leak, right? As long as it doesn't leak within 30 minutes, let's say 30 minutes to an hour, you're good. If it leaks after that, if you leave it there for 5 hours and there's like a tiny little leak, a little drop, that's okay, because once you put this back in the engine, okay, and those pistons are, it starts heating up and those pistons are going back and forth, that thing is gonna seal properly. Okay, so you're not gonna get a perfect seal. That's a hard test. Leaving this overnight filled with water or kerosene or whatever, that's a hard test. Probably only a brand new, recently machined head would pass that test. An old head, 200,000 miles head like this, even though you have a new valve, that's the original seat in there, you're not gonna have, but you gotta, 30 minutes to an hour, it's gotta be bone dry. That way you'll get a good seal once you put this in the engine. So I'm hoping I'm getting toward the end. Maybe I gotta lap it a few more times, but I'm gonna do another light test just to make sure. If I don't see any light, then I'm gonna do a water test. Okay, if all good, then I'm gonna put the springs in. Then I'm gonna do the ultimate test, right, where you put this on the side like this and you pour water in here, right? That's the ultimate test, because then you have the weight of the water, gravity pulling that water down. If you leak, if you look in here and you don't see any moisture seeping out of here after about 30 minutes, then you're good. You're good to go. You're done. You can put this back in, clean it up, put it back in. You're done.